Pretty, get out here. Pretty interesting article here. I don't know if you've heard about this, but the Israeli government, the intelligence service, I believe Mossad, in particular, is behind this kind of nuclear terrorism attack against Iran's one of Iran's nuclear facilities, which is obviously a huge, massive act of aggression on the part of the Israeli government towards Iran. And this is from Samina Rahman, Liberation News, a newspaper for the PSL, Party for Socialism and Liberation. Iran's key Natanz site suffered a blackout due to a cyber attack April 12th, and today's the 15th, 14th. So Monday, I think, Monday. Senior Israeli officials hinted at the Mossad intelligence agency's responsibility for this attack. The New York Times cited U.S. and Israeli officials confirming Israel's role. Iran called the attack an act of nuclear terrorism. I think that's pretty accurate, frankly. I don't know how else you would describe this. Sabotage of the facility's power grid is a gross violation of Iran's internationally recognized sovereign right to develop nuclear technology for peaceful purposes. And, I mean, for fuck's sake, even if they were using this nuclear technology to develop a nuclear weapon, what right does the United States, Israel, or any other country have who frankly has, the U.S. has the biggest arsenal of nuclear weapons in the world? What fucking right do we have to tell Iran to not do that? And again, if they had it, it would be a deterrent against U.S. aggression, against the U.S. starting a war with Iran, or Israel starting a war with Iran, because they would have that kind of, ace in their pocket, if you will, the threat of being able to, well, if you guys start fucking with us, well, we also have nukes, so get the fuck out. Leave us alone. Let us do our own thing, So fuck the Israeli government, fuck the U.S. government, fuck all these European powers who are bowing to U.S. Terms as far as, the ridiculousness of not rejoining the JCPOA after Trump unilaterally pulled out while Iran was in full compliance. Iran faces the constant threat of military attacks and other violent provocations. So yes, Israel and other hostile countries in the region. However, the country's government has consistently maintained has no intention of developing nuclear weapons. And again, even if they did, that's their fucking prerogative. I mean, if the U.S. wants to tell people to not develop nuclear weapons, get rid of all of ours. Encourage everybody else to get rid of them. Pressuring Iran on the pretext of its nuclear program was reinvigorated after Trump withdrew from the JCPOA, aka the Iran nuclear deal. Despite Iran's verified compliance with the JCPOA's stipulations, the U.S. subsequently reinstated all sanctions that were lifted by the accord and threatened to sanction any government entity that conducted business with Iran. Who's the fucking terrorist? Who's a threat to world peace? The fucking U.S. and their piece of shit allies. I mean, for fuck's sake. This blockade continued even in the midst of a global pandemic. That is how just lethal and murderous and disgusting on every level that the U.S. fucking empire is. Death and destruction all over the world. And again, the United States is the biggest fucking terrorist organization in the world. It's important to note that the incident comes just after Iranian officials met with the remaining signatories of the JCPOA in Vienna last week to revive the agreement. Iranian Foreign Affairs Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif outlined Iran's proposed path forward. It involves the U.S.'s return to full compliance first, as they should, because again, the U.S. unilaterally fucking pulled out. As this author points out, Iran was in full compliance. Followed by Iran's reciprocation after rapid verification, the removal of all Trump-era sanctions without exceptions. Yes, completely. Again, Trump sanctions, whether it's on Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Syria, anywhere else, are literally war crimes that impact the most vulnerable and marginalized in those countries, and they're disgusting. Significant progress was made and 2 commissions are formed to work towards a solution. There's The Iranian foreign minister's tweet on it. The meeting in Vienna to resuscitate the JCPOA was heavily criticized by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin, aka Bibi Netanyahu, vowed earlier this year to stop Iran's development of nuclear technology despite Israel's, here we go, look, the hypocrisy abounds. Despite Israel's own unacknowledged arsenal of nuclear weapons. As of 2020, Israel is to believe to have 90 nuclear warheads and to have, quote, to have produced enough plutonium for 100 to 200 weapons. So they're not even willing to let Iran develop nuclear technologies for peaceful purposes, aka power. But Israel itself has believed to have at least 90 nuclear warheads. Kind of fucked up, right? Do as I say, not as I do type of thing. Last November, Israel's widely believed to assassinate top Iranian nuclear scientist Mohsen Rizda. I apologize, I probably butchered the hell out of that. More recently, Israel amped up hostilities after the Biden administration expressed an interest to rejoining the JCPOA and attack two Iranian ships in the last 2 weeks. Again, who is the provocateur here? Who is the aggressor? The United States, and it's one of the biggest allies in the region, Israel. It's fucking disgusting. The latest attack on Iran illustrates the violent and imperial nature of the forces that want to continue to suffocate the people of Iran with devastating sanctions. This also points to a contradiction between the Biden admin, which views JCPOA as a tool to shift the U.S. war machine attention towards China, and its junior partner Israel, which opposes anything short of unmitigated hostility towards the country, as we've seen. They have believed to have 90 nuclear weapons, and they don't even want Iran to develop nuclear technology for peaceful purposes. Pretty hypocritical, right? Cyber attack was all the more brazen considering it took place on the same day that the U.S. Defense Secretary Austin was visiting Israel. No matter what the source of the aggression is, the people of the U.S. gain nothing from a cruel economic war being waged on the people of Iran. Completely. And all the sanctions, and the fucking sanctions on Iran, Syria, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba, where else? It's probably the biggest ones. Probably even North Korea, end the sanctions, rejoin the fucking Iranian nuclear deal, close all U.S. foreign bases. It's like 7 to fucking 800 and 100 plus countries. End all that shit. Imperialism. Again, sanctions are a form of imperialism. And again, this isn't frankly very surprising from the Israeli government, but again, one of the reasons they're able to get away with this type of egregious behavior is because of the U.S.'s unconditional support of the Israeli government. They're able to do shit like this, as well as, not give any type of human rights towards the Palestinians, continue to occupy Palestinian territories, brutalize people who speak up against the occupation, brutalize people who are out there. I mean, those little fucking kids were foraging for flowers the other day, and the Israeli occupation forces arrested them for doing that. I mean, for fuck's sake. The U.S. And Iran have no fucking right to tell Iran or any other country what to do whatsoever. No fucking moral or ethical high ground, and should be pretty clear to everybody that's the situation by now. Like the video if you like the damn video. Subscribe for more content. Peace. Much love.